My name's Jackie Sandland. I'm the Pathways Performance Psychologist at Athletics Australia, and part of my role is to provide the mental performance in competition program to the PTP group of athletes. So I did give everyone at the camp a bit of a rundown on this. So if you weren't there, just quickly, this is a program that we've run with the PTP group last year, and we're rolling it out for a second time this year. I've made the course a little bit different because there are a few people that are doubling up second year of PTP, so we don't want them to be getting the same content, but there will be a little bit of overlap for those of you who might be in the program for a second time, but hopefully there's lots of new information here too. And just unfortunately, due to the location of athletes all around the country, we have had to do this program majority online. There's just, at the moment, there's no real way around that. We hope that in the future, through Athletics Australia, this might become more of a practical program, and we're just working through ways to make that work at the moment. But for now, hopefully you'll get some information from this, and as part of being part of the PTP program, I'm available for individual sessions as well to any of the athletes in the program. So yeah, coaches and athletes, I'm happy for you to reach out at any time for me to work with athletes or coaches if you have questions. I'm happy to answer and help you support your athletes on their journey. So tonight we touched on some concepts at the camp, but we're going to review a few of those, and then we're going to sort of start the journey of how this program is going to look. And I'll be presenting on the first Monday of every month from now and through till April in the same format, 45-minute online session. And yeah, I guess because of the size of the group, it's a bit of me talking at you. There's a bit of interaction with phone. I'm going to few QR codes where I'll get you to answer some questions on your phone. And then at the end, there'll be time for you to actually ask questions. So if you want to put questions in the chat throughout, that's great. I'm more than happy to look at them. And then at the end, we can have a bit of a discussion. So to get going, tonight's topic is understanding your emotions, and I guess trying to link this with how this can to enhance performance. Now I'm going to be sort of jumping around here, letting people in as we go, so bear with me as we go along. But for those who have jumped on late, just so you know, I am recording this session. So yeah, I guess this is just to get some ideas. Tonight's very much around a self-awareness piece, and I'll explain why I think that's important for performance as we go along. But really sort of looking foundational level of how much do you understand yourself? How much do you understand what you're feeling, what you're thinking? And then how much is that helping you or distracting you from really being able to perform at your best? So we're going to jump right in with a poll. So if you've got your phone handy, just scan that QR code, and I want you to just have a brainstorm, put anything you can think of. What might impact your performance? And I guess when I'm saying impact, I'm talking about things that might pull you away from performing at your best. So you can put things in there that might distract you on race day or competition day, or it might be some things away from the competition arena as well that can impact your performance. But I'll just give you a few minutes to have a go, and we'll see a bit of a word cloud pop up shortly. Overthinking. So yeah, first answer is busy mind. I'm sure we can all relate to that. Relationship issues, and that can come out in all sorts of ways, right? That can come out in relationships away from sport that are impacting you to be able to show up and think clearly. But that might also be, coach-athlete relationship or athlete-athlete relationship and things like that. Perhaps, you've got a parent. I know there's some parents that are also coaches here, and that comes with its own challenges, but also its own benefits as well. So, this isn't all about things that are problems. You might really know your son or daughter, and that works really well for you. General stress, study, school, that's always going to be getting in the way, isn't it? With busy group of people, high-performing people often have lots going on in their life. And what we see with that is, sometimes a real challenge with trying to balance just life and sport in general. Injury, as we know, injuries can pop up at any time, and unfortunately, sometimes they pop up at the worst time. And I guess just checking in with yourself on how you respond to that. And sometimes when we're injured or when things are going poorly, that's actually often when we learn the most about ourselves too. So yeah, we've got a few ideas there, and yeah, there's many more. So we'll move on from that for now. And here's a few ideas I had. So a couple of things that popped up that you guys talked about: relationship conflict, school, uni, work, depending on where you are in your life, and injury. Difficult thoughts or feelings. So someone wrote overthinking in the QR code poll there, but yeah, often we like the thoughts and feelings that feel good, or tell us that we're doing well, but sometimes those difficult ones can show up, and that can be really challenging. And I hope by the end of this course you've got some clear strategies on how you can manage that more effectively. Pressure to perform. Now, pressure is the way we feel about something. That's generally something internal that how we view the world, and that can be triggered by wanting to back up a good performance, potentially parents putting pressure on us. But sometimes that even comes from not parents intentionally doing that, but it might be, I often hear athletes will say, well, my parents invest so much in me to be able to do this, and I just really want to perform well for them. So again, when we're talking about pressure, it doesn't have to be negative. It might be just because you come from a very supportive family and you want to do the best you can for your family. Coaches, maybe competition, you care a lot about it and you want to do well. So again, feeling pressure is a good thing. It shows that you care. There's things you care about. Team selection, often often elements out of our control, and that can be really hard, because if we're doing everything we possibly can to perform the best, sometimes we just might not get into the relay team, or we might not make the World Juniors, or whatever it is we're trying to do, even if we've sort of brought everything we can with our performance to the event. Receiving bad news prior to an event. So sometimes things just happen. Life happens, keeps going. We can't always turn up and everything's perfect, as you all know. And again, hopefully through this course, you can start to learn ways that you don't need to necessarily turn up very composed and calm in order to perform well, because you've got some really clear strategies on how do I show up even when there's things going on within my sport or outside of sport that might affect me. And social media, or media in general, if for those of you who are going to go on and be quite high profile athletes, that's going to come with media attention. And again, that's really normal part of performing and being a high performer, but also at any sort of level, you might see social media posts. Sometimes things are posted with good intentions, but they can be interpreted. So again, a lot of this stuff can be out of our control. And if we can just think about, how do I respond when I see this? If I can learn to respond more effectively and rationally, then usually we can then direct our attention to what matters and still be able to perform our best. So I talked about psychological flexibility at the camp, and I went into a bit more depth. So I just wanted to touch on it briefly, because this is the underlying essence of this program, is the learning to have the ability to be psychologically flexible. And this is an ongoing process. This is not something that over the next 4 or 5 months you will be psychologically flexible, but you can definitely learn to become more flexible. And this is something that I'm probably still working on in my life too. I know all the research behind it and how effective it is, but it doesn't mean that we nail some of these concepts day to day, every time, in every situation. So I guess it's just the ability to adapt to changing situations. That can be within a race, or it might be lead up to or post race. Remaining open to new experiences. So rather than being really fixed on, my day needs to look like this in order to perform well, it's actually going, okay, let's be curious about when things get thrown at me last minute and I have to change. How do I respond to that? And do I need to learn new ways and new skills to be able to respond more effectively when life happens and throws things at me? Effectively managing difficult thoughts and emotions. Now, you'll see the language I'm using there is not getting rid of or changing. It's effectively learning how to manage, because humans have thinking brains and we have feelings, which is what I'm going to go into tonight. But we have that for a reason. And sometimes that means that when we're showing up and doing hard things, difficult thoughts and emotions show up as well. And really having that ability to stay focused on long-term goals, being really connected to what's important, and taking purposeful action to move towards those goals. And sometimes we can pivot and weave, and we might even feel like we're going backwards. But if we can be really clear on what's important, then we are willing to sort of go through the hard stuff to get to where we want to be. And all of this happens even in the face of challenge. So this is a psychological flexibility model that I just wanted to quickly present. And there's basically 3 elements to this: is the ability to open up, so creating space and being willing to accept difficult thoughts and feelings. And that's sort of the area I'm going to focus on tonight. Future sessions, it's about being present, so the ability to focus on the here and now and be observing of the situation, be observing of my thoughts and feelings, be observing of what's happening around me, rather than being really negative and getting judgmental on what our experience is. Now, the next session in January, I'm going to do a whole session on that, because that's a lot of mindfulness behind performance. How do we be present? And I will go into that judgment philosophy in more depth, because it can sometimes be a little bit hard to understand when you first hear it. And then finally, doing what matters. So clarifying your values, what's important, and then how do you move towards what's important, even when hard things are showing up. So it's really important to take some time to really start to understand you. So everyone on this call, everyone in the world has different genetics. They grow up in different environments. They have different beliefs and situations. And generally this leads to, us being really unique people, which is a good thing. So we want to try and embrace that and really take the time to, maybe think about what is it that impacts the way I view the world. And it's a bit, I've got all these funny looking shoes here, because it's a bit like shoes. Everyone's a different shoe size. Everyone's got different, I guess, taste in what they like to wear. Sometimes we have to wear things for function, and other times we might wear things because we think they look cool. And but we all have different needs there. And there's no right or wrong for any of this. Obviously, we don't want to be running a 100-meter sprint in high heels. So sometimes there is a right or wrong. But, it's about just sort of figuring out what works for you, what do you like? And if we can have a really clear understanding of maybe why how our experience can shape who we are, that can really sort of allow us to find a sense of identity, find a sense of self, and be really clear about, what is important and what do I need in different situations? What's happened in my life that's actually been really, I guess, important to shape who I am. And often, as I said before, often when we're doing hard things, that's when we learn the most about ourselves. So if you've found that perhaps your, athletic career has been challenging to date, think about what you've learned from those experiences. Or if it's really rolled quite smoothly, what have you learned about that too? How have you responded to being able to sort of pursue excellence? This is just a pyramid I put together just to sort of, I guess, gain a bit of understanding of why we're targeting this self-awareness piece first. So think about, some of you might do other sports as well, or may have done other sports too. And it might be easier to think about some of them, because if you're in PTP, you're doing pretty well at athletics. You might have forgotten the time when you first learnt to run or jump or throw. But there was a time where we were just learning that, and it was fun, and it was about just getting out there and having a go. And you were probably pretty young when that happened, and that's the beauty of being a kid. You're playful, you just have a crack, and you just get things done. And it doesn't matter if you make mistakes, it doesn't matter if you're not that good at it. But then we get to a point where we start to maybe show a bit of promise, or maybe we've won a race at school, and we start to get a little bit more kind of analysing about what we're doing. And this is a good thing, because this is how we start to learn or plan. We want to be critical. We want to be critical of, ourselves, because that's how we can get better. We want to be a bit critical of the world around us, because if we just accept everything at face value, we can become a bit naive. But when we start to get really critical around our performance, we can start to sort of see those inconsistent performances, or perhaps, we've gone up to the next level. So again, for those who might have gone to World Juniors last year, perhaps, or earlier this year actually, perhaps at a national level or a state level, you kill it. You're winning everything and it's all really easy, but then you sort of step up to that next level and there's more pressure, different setting, and perhaps your performance became a bit more inconsistent, which is really normal when things change. you might find in those high pressure situations, you become a bit more reactive to your emotions, you're a bit more distracted, and it's not as smooth sailing as perhaps that is in the low pressure or low stress situations. So then we kind of just start to go, okay, well, what's actually happening for me? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And what am I doing in these different situations? And this is where we're kind of targeting at the moment for tonight's session. And we touched on some of this work at the camp, 6 weeks ago or so. So what I would love you to encourage you to start doing, I mean, when you're training, when you're competing, start to think about what actually works for me, or what is my experience in my body or in my mind when I'm doing things that are hard, or when I'm doing things that, I'm pretty calm and chill and it's all working out. And I did give you guys a worksheet at the camp, and I'll put it up on the screen shortly, and I can send it to anyone who wasn't able to join us there. To start doing some monitoring, but I'll get to that in a minute. Then the next level is this self-regulation. So what do I need to perform at my best? Now, I've put this here from a mental perspective, but obviously there's lots of physical elements, and there's a whole bag of things we need to be able to show up and perform at your best. And it's about being on this journey and figuring out what does that look like for me? Because it probably looks different to your training buddy, or your brother or sister if they also athletes, or your friend. It's really about starting to go, what do I need, and what are some of my strengths, what do I do really well, and then what are some areas I might need to kind of dig a bit deeper and work a bit harder on. And then at the top of this pyramid is this idea of automaticity, which is when your performance felt automatic. And you can all probably remember multiple times where it just happened and it felt great, which is ideal. That's where we want to be. But we also, it doesn't happen all the time. So we want to be prepared, even when there's critical thoughts, the hard stuff going on, we can still know what to focus on at the right time. So often we think, well, when I'm calm and it's all smooth, I'll be in the zone, or whatever sort of terminology we want to use. But actually, I want to challenge you guys to start to go, I'm going to be able to show up, and no matter what happens, I can still focus on what I need to focus on. If the automatic performance happens, that's great. And it will happen. That's when we start getting, those really great performances. But we don't want to rely on being able to feel clear-headed and calm to perform, because, most of the time when we start to challenge ourselves and go to bigger competitions like, Olympic Games or Paralympics, there's going to be some difficult thoughts and feelings showing up there. So we can prepare for that. And it all comes back to this. I touched on this at the camp, so a bit of a review for most of you, but, it comes back to this fight or flight response that we have as humans that's helped keep us safe for many, many years. And over time, our brains have evolved to, look for threat in the environment, because when we ran away from it in the past, or we fought it and were successful, our brain learned that was actually a really good thing to do. When we got away from that threat, we felt calm, and that meant we were safe and we survived. So the brain's gone, aha, okay, if I scan the environment all the time and look for threat, that's a good thing. And then when that threat goes away, I'm calm and safe, and that feels good. So, but these days, when we're trying to be high performers, we don't have to fight saber-toothed tigers or any other sort of creature that might show up that we've never seen before or didn't have any information on. But we have other threats, and that's usually, for high performing people, underperformance. And that can, take place in many things. Often some of the stuff we've talked about already, but, maybe it's injury, but maybe it's just not bringing your best to the competition. And that will bring around some of those sort of anxiety symptoms. So that's the fight or flight response. And with anxiety, sometimes we get that worry, fear, doubt, judgment, all of that kind of stuff. So I guess if there's one thing you can take away from this slide, is it's really normal to feel those emotions and have those hard thoughts when we're doing things we care about, because our brain is in an environment where it wants you to perform well. So it starts going, well, what about this? This could go wrong. This could go wrong. This could go wrong. But it's not that helpful when we're trying to be really clear-minded. So acknowledging those thoughts and feelings, and then choosing what to focus on is a better way to do it. And we need to learn how to do that because of this survival response, because we want to be safe. But if we lived, you know, in a really safe environment all the time and didn't challenge ourselves, we'd probably just sit at home on the couch and watch Netflix all day and eat chocolate, which maybe sounds in the short term fun for half an hour, but that gets pretty boring pretty quickly. So we want to learn how we can push ourselves, manage anxiety in the pursuit of what matters, and still keep moving forward towards our goals. And the brain, just really simply, this is how the brain, I guess some key areas of how the brain works. We've got the brain stem, which kind of just cruises along and helps keep us safe. It operates subconsciously, and it helps us to do things like breathing. So we don't need to think about that. It just kind of happens. And that's all about that survival. We have the limbic system, which is the place where we process our emotion and our memory, and sort of starts to kind of consolidate some of that stuff. And it creates that initial emotional response. So when we are in that fight or flight mode, that our brain is pretty good at judging things really quickly, so that we don't have to spend lots of time analysing and creating. We have lots of kind of shortcuts in our brain that allow us to, function really effectively. It's really fascinating if you've got lots of time to sort of start to learn what parts of the brain do, if you're interested in that stuff, because it just operates in such an amazing way. But emotion takes over, and sometimes it floods our brain with hormones that then sort of take this logic area, the prefrontal cortex, offline. And that becomes a problem, because that's the area where we start to make good choices. You know, we can plan, we pay attention, we learn, and it's got this ability to interpret emotional responses into logic, which is kind of the coolest part about it. So you might see, you know, for example, someone that's got a brain injury in their prefrontal cortex, sometimes we might see them very kind of prone to emotional outbursts, that sort of thing. It sort of stops when you've got some damage there. You might start to lose your ability to manage those emotional responses more effectively. And essentially that's what happens when we get, you know, big floods of anxiety, and we haven't learned to manage it more effectively. That really, we become very emotional. And again, you might notice it with your parents if they annoy you, and you might snap at them, get really angry, storm out of the room. All of that is that limbic system sort of taking over a bit and taking the prefrontal cortex offline. Now, if this is all a bit like, oh, I don't really care about the brain, I guess just in future sessions when we start doing things like a bit later in the session today, and we're going to talk about tuning into our body, and future sessions around mindfulness, this is about trying to help that prefrontal cortex stay online so that we can still bring our performance to the times where it really matters, and not get really overwhelmed by emotion and then lose that ability to you know, basically perform and train, bring what we've trained to do to a performance when it really matters. And I guess I just like to think of emotions as signposts to life. You know, again, because I was talking about that fight or flight response before, our body and our brain has learnt to have these emotions, and usually they're showing up, these stronger ones, because we want to pay attention. There's something in the environment we need to pay attention to. So you'll see, you know, joy and excitement, often, you know, they're the feelings we like, and sometimes angry and nervous, maybe we don't like them so much. But often, as you all know, nerves also kind of overlap with anxiety. So we start to feel some similar symptoms. We can feel overwhelmed with a lot of emotion. We can feel angry and sad at the same time. We can feel hopeful and angry at the same time, like or pretty, you know, closely overlapped. It's amazing what our brain and body can do. And the more you can start to understand your emotions and do things like put labels on them, or understand why we're feeling certain things, it just gives you a little bit more openness to accepting them. Because often what happens when we start to feel some of the harder emotions like anger or fear, often we don't like that. So we spend all this energy trying to push it away, you know, distract ourselves, control, and then we show up to the race or the competition and we're exhausted already because we've spent all this energy trying to get rid of it. But if we can actually start to go, hey, it's okay. These are just part of being human. What do I need to focus on? That can be a much more effective way to manage some of those harder emotions. And I guess it's also about how we see the environment. And I just like this slide because it's sort of showing that, you know, when we are in some of those more, if we are someone that kind of feels quite anxious or nervous or worried about performing, sometimes even just thinking about it, like this person thinking about maybe a race or winning a gold medal, they might start to experience all this stuff in their body sensation responses, and see that as a threat, interpret that as a threat. But actually what we want to start to do, it's the same emotional responses, but actually start to view it as a challenge. So, you know, this big race I'm working for, or this big event I'm working towards, how can I view this as a challenge rather than seeing every time my brain starts coming out with all these ideas of what could go wrong, rather than seeing that as a threat. So next little poll, what body sensations might you experience when you're preparing to compete? Now, I guess I'm looking for things like, I don't know, heart racing, jelly legs, that kind of stuff. So what are you actually feeling in your body? See if you can have a go and come up with some ideas. So for those who have jumped online, we're just doing a poll, scan the QR code, and then the answer will come up on the screen. Yep, butterflies, pretty common one. And as we know, butterflies shows up when we're nervous and excited. So it doesn't have to be, you know, interpreted as a bad thing. Yep, feeling numb. So we might get sort of numbness through our whole body, or it might be in parts of our body. Yeah, brain fog. So brain fog when the mind goes probably essentially numb, but a bit blank. Insomnia. So someone's saying they might struggle with sleep, and that might be potentially the night before a race or comp. And that dry mouth. So the butterflies, the dry mouth, they're very much kind of some anxiety, sort of normal symptoms. Butterflies is sometimes our body, our tummy kind of saying, oh, I don't think you should eat because I'm preparing to run. And this has gone back to caveman days. Obviously not eating before a competition is not a good idea these days, but back in the day it was about lightening the load and trying to get out of somewhere fast. But we obviously need to, and same with that loss of appetite that's just popped up. You know, we obviously need to fuel effectively for performance now, but back in the day, it was all about just quick response and get out of there. Someone said weak, which could be potentially, you know, some of that, you know, I've spent a lot of time trying to not feel something because I don't like it. And now I'm showing up and I'm feeling pretty weak and exhausted from that. And I guess I'm not going to talk too much about sleep tonight. I'll probably talk about sleep in future sessions, but just with that insomnia, I think it's really important to remember that one night of poor sleep wouldn't affect performance. If we're getting multiple nights, yes, it will. But sometimes when you're lying in bed the night before a race, just remember that, you know, you can still perform well on one night of poorish sleep. Often we'll go, oh my goodness, I'm not sleeping well, I've ruined tomorrow, and we sort of give up before we even get there. Someone's saying they feel really active. So yeah, when you're getting prepared, you're feeling energized, you're ready to go, jumpy, bowel movements. Yeah. So again, that sort of ties back into that, what I was talking about before with the, and needing to vomit. They're all showing up, aren't they? That kind of idea of like, oh, I don't want food in my tummy right now. It doesn't feel good. But again, just linking back to survival. And we've got lots of body sensations that respond to that, you know, caveman day response. But we need to manage some of that stuff. So we need to have breakfast. So if you're having trouble with not getting food in, you know, obviously speak to Bryce. We'll have some good ideas on how to manage that stuff, because that can be pretty challenging if you're showing up with some anxious symptoms before a race. But all very, very normal. This is just being human. So just think about what is it that you've got, what's your experience. And what we tend to find is our bodies have kind of a bit of a go-to. So you'll start to see patterns. Like every time I feel nervous, whether it's maybe to do with competition or maybe it's to do with school exams or whatever it is else you're doing that you care about, you might start to notice some of these similar symptoms. Or maybe you care a lot more about being an athlete than a scholar, and so maybe this stuff's a bit stronger there, or vice versa. But I guess it's just important to think, you know, remember that optimal performance is about focusing on the right thing at the right time. So a really simple explanation of what as a sports psychologist, I do every day with working with athletes is managing some of the inner world stuff, the difficult thoughts and feelings, and then choosing to focus on what you need to focus on, and working with your coach. And if you work with a sports psych, that getting clarity around that can be very helpful. We all have different levels of willingness to experience this discomfort, though. I've talked a little bit about difficult thoughts and feelings a bit tonight, and some of us will be like the little espresso coffee. The willingness to actually want to sit with some of this hard stuff is, you put a bit of coffee in and it overflows pretty quickly. But we can grow our capacity to experience discomfort. So think about the big Macca's coffee, the big, large, whatever it is you like to drink. But we want to actually grow our capacity to tolerate this stuff so that we're freer in our mind to be able to choose to focus on what we need to do. And like I said, some of you might be the espresso now, some of you might be kind of around that bigger cup and able to tolerate a lot of that stuff and just show up and are able to perform when it really matters. And going back to my slide earlier, we are different in that way, and that's a mixture of genetics, experience, environment, beliefs, all of that sort of stuff. So there's no right or wrong with this. It's just about learning where you're at and what you need. So this is kind of how we roll as humans. There's a situation that triggers some thoughts about that situation. We might start to feel certain things, and that's labeling emotions or feeling those body sensations that I asked about. And then we tend to sort of do something about it. And this all happens pretty quickly. This happens all the time. Like this happens getting on this call tonight. I've got this call. Okay, I better get on there, 5 minutes before. I'm feeling a bit tired, but I'll get on it anyway because I want to learn something new. Or it might be like, oh, I can't be bothered listening tonight. It's late and I'm tired, so I'm just not going to even log on. So, as you can see, it just happens without even being that aware of it. But the more you can become aware of some of this stuff, we can then start to learn to choose our action in a more effective way. And how do we do that? Well, we start to do some things like monitoring. And this is the worksheet I gave you all when we're in Canberra. So just literally putting it down on paper can be quite a powerful exercise to say, yeah, well, what do I feel in my body? What does my mind say? And what am I feeling? And then what do I do in response to that? And you'll see I've got a little example here. Maybe, you've got feeling some muscle tension, you're feeling a bit sweaty, your mind starts saying, what if I make a mistake? I can't do this. You start to feel frustrated, confused and nervous, and then you might, rather drop your head a bit or even do a false start. So it can play out pretty quickly in a bit of a negative way. That's a bit of a sort of a not so good answer, but maybe we can sort of get it to the point where we start to notice some of these sensations, notice our thoughts. We can learn to sort of create space with that and then choose to actually really stay focused on what we're trying to do, keep our head up, and then be able to execute what we've trained to do. Because essentially when we show up to competition day, we're just trying to go out and replicate what we've trained to do. We don't necessarily actually have to lift and be better, because that just puts pressure on us to, feel like we need to do something we haven't trained for. So we want to be training at a really high standard so that you're actually just going out there and replicating. And I'm going to steal a saying from my colleague, Jonah Oliver, who's the lead psych at Athletics Australia, but he always says that competition it's an ordinary performance on a special day. And all that's saying is that you are going out, and yes, the context changes because it's a competition, but you're actually just going out there and doing what you've trained to do. Now, this concept of interoceptive awareness. So I've talked a fair bit about body sensations today, and it's just a really great skill that you can learn for a variety of different reasons, as I've outlined here. So this is that understanding of what our body is trying to tell us. Now, there's lots of reasons we want to do some work in this area, and often some of us are pretty good at this anyway, just understanding what our body's trying to say, but others not so much. And it's just the first step to going, okay, I need to be a bit more self-aware. I need to understand my emotions a little bit more. How can I do that? And I'll go through some strategies in a moment. But why do we want to do that? Well, it allows you to sort of be really fine-tuned make changes in a really fine-tuned way for effort and adjustment. It will allow you to sort of notice early warning signs of your body, optimize recovery. You can be really in tune with what you're feeling if you're quite aware, because sometimes if we're not very aware of our body, we can just sort of push through, and sometimes that's not helpful. Obviously, there's times where we need to push through some pain when we're training hard, but if you've got a really good understanding of your body's response, then it can be really helpful to sort of notice the difference between, okay, do I need to pay attention here, or do I need to keep pushing through and working harder? The improved self-awareness will allow for sort of really tailored approaches to what you actually need. Who do you need in your support crew? Do you need to dial up your nutrition? Do you need to work with the sports psych? Do you need to make some changes with your training? And these are all great conversations you can have with your coach. And just really enhancing that body-mind connection to enhance that well-being, your well-being as well, because we want you to perform well, but we also want you to be adjusted people that are enjoying living their best life. It doesn't always have to be about just sort of flogging your body in order to be the best at your event. And emotional regulation, essentially. So knowing when you need to implement strategies. So it's going back to my pyramid earlier around when do I actually need to bring something in here? How can I stay really composed when there's a lot of pressure and stress and it is a performance that really matters? And then having that adaptability around staying present and focused, and that improved ability to respond to adversity. So the ability to bounce back when things, in the face of challenge. And I'll go into that point more in the next session in January. Okay, so the first step, how do we start to kind of be more open and accepting of some of these difficult thoughts, sensations and emotions? And I like to think about it as this beach ball. If you're in the pool or maybe at sea and someone throws you a beach ball and someone says, try and push that thing underwater, and you can spend all this energy and time trying to push this damn thing into the water, but no matter how hard you push, if it's got enough air in it, it's going to probably pop out and hit you in the face. So it's the same with emotions. If we try and suppress thoughts, feelings, body sensations, don't look at it, stay really busy so we're not paying attention to them, they're eventually going to come out somehow. And you might be able to relate to a time where, I don't know, maybe there's some pretty hard stuff going on in your life and you didn't want to sort of take the time to process that. And then maybe it came out in, I don't know, you just had a bit of a breakdown one day, or you got really angry at someone unfairly or something like that. Often when we're suppressing, it will eventually need time to come out. So we want to take the time to actually notice what it is that we're thinking and feeling, and then have choice around what we want to do with it. I'd love to say if you do this and this, you're going to feel happy all the time, but I sort of don't want to say that, because I think if you're happy all the time, life's probably a bit boring. Like I think it's better to ride those waves of emotion and have the good and the bad days, because when we go through the hard times, the better days, feel better. But also, it's like that slide before, just tuning into our environment and going, well, what do I need to pay attention to, and what do I need right now? So some strategies around how we can start to make room for the thoughts, sensations, emotions is using something like this, which is an emotion wheel. There's lots of them online. This is just one that we have at my clinic. But if you Google emotion wheel, you'll see heaps of them. And the good thing about it is you can get really big ones. So this has just got a few layers, but you can get like multiple layers. And you can even get some that have like body sensations in them as well. So it's just a cool resource if you're struggling to kind of label what you're feeling or understand what you're feeling. It's just going to help you to navigate that. And you can see here, it's sort of, this one's divided into quarters. You've got the big emotions in the middle. So essentially anger, sadness, fear, and joy are pretty much the main emotions we feel. And then there's more subtle emotions that sit under there. So a couple of reasons that I feel like the emotion wheel is a really good one is, if we're going to talk about anxiety, which I've been touching on a fair bit tonight, that's the fear corner, the dark blue corner on the right. And you'll see under there, nerves, panic, anxious, dread, unsure, worried. They're all things that athletes talk to me all the time about experiencing when they're doing things that they've worked really hard to do. But also, we want to notice the good stuff. So the yellow corner, joy, when do I feel really proud? When do I feel energized? Someone mentioned energized on the poll before. Am I really grateful just to get this opportunity? We can get really caught up in some of the hard stuff, and then we can miss some of the celebration and the good stuff that's going on as well. So it's really important, if you're finding yourself getting a bit down, just take a moment to reflect on, some of that sort of excitement and gratefulness that does also come with, an athletic career. And the strategy is simply just noticing and naming. Now, it sounds simple, but just noticing what you're feeling in your body. So my heart is racing, my legs feel like jelly, I'm feeling anxious, and you're just simply labeling, and you're just giving yourself a moment to process, connect, understand what's going on, and then going, okay, that's okay. Yep, of course my heart's racing. I really care about this competition. I want to do well. What do I need to do now? Rather than, oh my God, like I'm feeling really anxious and I don't like this. I'm going to do some deep breathing and I'm going to try and get it away, or, whatever it is that you might try and do to distract. It's just about sitting with this, but it's about also practicing. If you start to do this the morning of a big race, you're not going to be used to doing it. So I would start to just practice it at training. Do it now, start to really connect with your body. And then finally, we'll go into questions in a moment, but I'm actually going to just do a quick progressive muscle relaxation with you. So for those who were in Lima, I did run some of these in the evening. So there might be a few people on the call that sat in on something similar to this, but I'm happy for you to, if you can, turn your camera off, find a comfortable seat or lie down. And this is going to take about 5 minutes. And then at the end of this, we'll come back together, and I'm happy to have a bit of a chat and answer some questions about any of the content we've talked about tonight. So the purpose of this activity is to link in with that interoceptive awareness that I was talking about. So this is a bit of a body scan. Start to tune into what you're feeling. And this can be a strategy that can be useful, to do it daily, or it can be the morning of a race if you're feeling a bit of tension, just to give yourself that time to check in with yourself. So I'm just going to turn my camera off, and I'm just going to talk you through this activity. So just find a comfortable spot if you can. I know there might be some people that can't do that. So just sort of, if you can't, just listen in, and you might be able to have a go at this at another time. And just take a deep breath in. And a deep breath and a breath out. Just make sure you're in a position that you can let your hands rest loosely in your lap or by your side, and closing your eyes. Just become aware of your breathing. Notice how your abdomen rises and falls with each breath. Take a long, slow, deep breath in through your nose, all the way down into your stomach. Hold the breath for just a moment, and then exhale through your mouth. Take another deep breath in. Hold it for a moment, and then let it go. Feel that your body has already undergone a change. The tension in your body has begun to loosen and subside. Just let your breathing rhythm return to normal and relax. So during this relaxation, I'll ask you to tense various muscles throughout your body. Just do this without straining. You don't need to exert yourself. Just contract each muscle firmly but gently as you breathe in. If you feel uncomfortable at any time, you can simply relax and just breathe. So bring awareness to your feet and toes. Breathe in deeply through your nose. And as you do, gradually curl your toes down and tense the muscles in the soles of your feet. Hold your breath for a few seconds, And then release the muscles in your feet as you breathe out. Notice how different your feet feel when tense and when they're relaxed. Now bring your awareness to your lower legs, to your calf muscles. As you draw in a deep breath, point your toes upwards towards your knees and tighten these muscles. Hold for a moment. And then let those muscles go limp as you exhale. Now draw your attention to the muscles in your thighs. If you're lying down, you can do this trying to straighten your legs. If you're seated, just push your heels down into the floor. Take a deep breath in. Tense the muscles in your thighs. Hold for a moment. And then release everything. Enjoy this feeling of relaxation in your thighs. Now bring your awareness to your stomach. Draw in a nice deep breath and tighten these muscles. Imagine you're trying to touch your belly button to your spine. Now release your breath and let your muscles relax. Notice the sensation of relief that comes from letting go. Now give your attention to your shoulder muscles and the muscles in your neck. As you draw in a nice deep breath, pull your shoulders up towards your ears and squeeze these muscles firmly. Now breathe out completely and allow your contracted muscles to go loose and limp. Feel the heaviness in your body now. Enjoy the feeling. Feel yourself becoming more and more relaxed. Now tighten the muscles in your face by squeezing your eyes shut and clenching your lips together. As you do, breathe in fully, hold it. Now breathe out and relax your facial muscles. Feel your face softening. Just take a few more minutes to relax or moments. Listen to the sound of your breathing and enjoy the warm sensation of physical relaxation. Take a few more deep breaths. And when you're ready, bring yourself back into the room, open your eyes. And if you like to, you can turn your camera on and I will await to see if anyone has any questions. Or comments. You can either put them in the chat or you can turn your camera, your mic on and ask me. So while people are just thinking of questions, as I mentioned before, the next session will be January the 6th, same time as this one. And that's going to be mindfulness for performance. So that body scan that we just did is more about relaxation, scanning your body for tension, and the intention about that is literally just finding tension, helping you relax. And if you do have some issues sleeping, not for a comp, something like that can be really helpful. Whereas the mindfulness for performance is actually more about being really present and intentional with your focus and attention. So slightly different reasons we do these different activities. But hopefully you might have found a bit of relaxation. I probably cut that one a bit short because I know I've gone over time, but those relaxation scripts can go for as long as you want, and there's apps and things like that too. So if you found that quite useful, Smiling Mind, Insight Timer, they're two really good apps that I recommend that you can find those kind of scripts on.